Is it your goal to build muscle or to lose body fat? Maybe you want both. Well, even this is possible, it is actually very hard to get the most out of both goals. And that can very fast lead to frustration because you will miss out the visible results that you're aiming for. There are just very specific circumstances in which gaining muscle and losing fat can be achieved successfully. I talked about the so-called recomposition approach in detail in one of my last videos. A recomposition, meaning being able to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, is recommended for newbies in the gym, women after pregnancy, or after you had a long training break. But what if you don't fall into one of those categories? Then you need to decide whether you want to first gain muscle, which requires an increase of your calories, or to lose body fat, which requires a caloric deficit. If you're trying to attempt both, you will very likely not achieve anything. Gaining muscle and losing fat are conflicting goals because building muscle requires anabolic circumstances, and in order to lose fat, our body needs to be in a catabolic state. That means when you, for example, want to gain muscle, you need to feed your body with enough calories, or more specific, more calories than you're burning, so that your body can actually build extra muscle tissue. But being in a slight calorie surplus won't make you lose fat. What can happen though is that you will gain muscle and therefore you will look leaner because your muscles get more visible. Oftentimes the body fat distribution changes in a building phase, and that can make you look better or leaner even though you still have the same amount of body fat, or maybe even slightly more. In contrast, when you want to lose fat and you're in a caloric deficit, you will very unlikely build extra muscle tissue because your body is in a survival mode. Since your body doesn't have extra calories left, it won't use the calories that are provided for extra muscle. In a survival mode, the calories are first invested into functions that involve your brain, liver, heart, and your kidneys. The rest of the calories will be invested into functions like talking, moving throughout the day, your training, etc. So something like building extra muscle wouldn't be very smart to invest into for your body because it is not necessary to survive. Therefore, you can't expect crazy muscle growth in a deficit, but your physique can still appear more muscular because your muscle look more defined the leaner you get. I used to compete in bodybuilding for 4 years. That and hip-hop dancing is actually my fitness background before I started training for health, functionality, fun, and just an athletic physique. Anyways, what I was going to say is in the end of a contest prep, I was 5 to 7 kilos lighter, but looked more muscular. Having now these principles in mind, we can better decide which phase is the one you should aim for first. Usually I ask my clients first what is more important to them. Let's say a client tells me that losing fat is more important to him or her, which requires a caloric deficit. But before we actually go down this path, we need to identify his or her diet history. If that person, for example, has a history of multiple crash diets and as a result of it, the metabolism runs on a low flame, it is not a good idea for that person to start with a deficit because the body probably won't respond to even a low number of calories anymore. This happens because of the body's ability to adapt. In that case, we talk about negative metabolic adaptations. Let's say the person ate in a too extreme deficit of 1,200 calories because unfortunately certain apps and programs promote such ridiculously low calories. And when the body adapts to such low calories, it would mean that I would have to decrease my client's calories even more, which I would never do because that would just worsen the whole cycle of negative metabolic adaptations. To make it easy for you to decide which goal is the first one that fits to your current situation, I created a simple decision tree that you can follow. Let's say you would like to lose fat. If you have a higher body fat than about 18% for women and 13% for men, you're not showing any symptoms of negative metabolic adaptations, and if you have, as a woman, a regular period, you are good to go and can start your fat loss phase. If you're answering one of these questions with no, I do not recommend a deficit because that will be harmful to your health. And when it comes to body fat percentage, there is no clear body fat level that tells you that you're healthy. Only extreme ranges as low as 4% or as high as 35% can be easy to identify as unhealthy. But for some women, a body fat percentage of, for example, 18 might be actually fine, and for other women it might be way too low and she would show symptoms like a loss of her period. Or applied to men, a deficit in testosterone. Also, when people, articles, etc. talk about body fat percentages, it is never clear how they were measured. With a skin fold method, via DEXA scan, with a scale, they will all show different body fat percentages for the same human at the same day. That means this number of higher than 18% for women or higher than 13% for men is just a rough guideline. Now, if you're showing signs of a slow metabolism like stalled weight loss, fast weight gain, lethargy, hair loss, skin problems, hypothyroidism due to extreme deficits, loss of your period, or an irregular cycle, then we need to fix your metabolism first, because that shows that you're in a state of a relative energy deficiency, which is also called RED-S, so relative energy deficiency syndrome. That means that functions of your body are turned off that are not necessary to survive. Growing hair, recovering your skin, having your period. I suffered from it too, which is why it is such an important topic for me to talk about. Maintaining or growing muscle, bone health, digestion, etc. are all not necessary to stay alive. If you answer one of these questions with yes, I recommend you doing a building phase or also so-called reverse diet for a minimum 6 months in which you increase your calories step by step. Your metabolism is not damaged. It might be slowed down and is in a survival mode, but you can reverse that by increasing your calories and by showing your body that there is no need anymore to conserve energy. Once you reached a better baseline in terms of your new maintenance calories, you should stay there for another minimum 2 months to give your body the time to adapt and to recover from your crash diet history. The more extreme and restrictive you treated your body in the past, the longer you should stay at your new maintenance calories. Once all symptoms will fade, you can think about a new fat loss phase, but this time not in an extreme way. Thirdly, I want to talk about a scenario which is more a mental problem but can manifest in a physical pattern, which is if you have a high food focus or binge eating on a regular basis. Why the term binge eating is very common and should be quite clear for everyone. The term food focus is not really defined. You're having a high food focus if you're permanently thinking of food, looking at recipes or food that you would like to eat, but that you're actually not eating in the end. Or if you're smelling on food, but don't eat it because you think it will have a negative impact on your body in terms of gaining weight. And in most extreme cases, people even dream about food that they wish to eat, but in the end are not eating. Since this is oftentimes a result or at least enhanced by extreme deficits and restrictive diets, feeding this very unhealthy relationship to food with a deficit is definitely not recommended. What you should do instead is to start a reverse diet or muscle building phase until you reached a number of calories, or if you're doing it without calorie tracking, in general an amount of food that satisfies you so much that your body has no reasons to crave things that you restrict yourself from. Oftentimes the allowance itself decreases the cravings, but I talked more about that in this video. When you're feeling recovered from your restrictive behaviors in the past for long enough, like 6 to 12 months minimum, and you still have the desire to do a healthy fat loss phase, then you might be ready to start a moderate deficit. And what I would highly recommend as well is implementing diet breaks in which you go on your maintenance calories. This can prevent you from developing a high food focus and overeating. Let's move on with the question whether or not a muscle building phase is making sense for you. Again, we are beginning with the question if you're showing any signs of negative metabolic adaptations that we were just talking about, or if you have a high food focus or want to build significant more muscle. Then this goal is a clear yes. You should start increasing your calories to make and see optimal progress. And let's also talk for one moment about the possible performance goals that you might have, like being able to lift more weights, run faster, or learning a new skill. That can happen to some degree in a caloric deficit as well, especially when your training level is at a beginner or intermediate state. But you might hit a faster plateau, and that can lead to frustration again. The only scenario where I am going into a weight loss phase with clients is with high-level athletes like my Olympia track and field athlete or my gymnast athlete that are doing competitions on a very high level and need to have a very specific body weight to perform their best on a specific day. But that requires a close cooperation and is not really comparable with a normal weight loss phase, since we make very little adjustments almost on a daily basis to prevent any loss of performance. Plus, these athletes oftentimes just need to lose 1 to maximum 5 kilos. If you're not a high performance athlete and you want to get the most out of your weight loss phase or your performance goals, you need to decide what is more important to you. In most cases, I would recommend staying at least at maintenance calories for performance goals and adjust calories only based on the perception of how much energy you had in that training session. And if you have a very low body fat percentage, a building phase might make the most sense, especially if muscle hypertrophy and strength gains are the goal as well. Okay, let's continue with the next scenario. Let's say you just did a fat loss phase. Should you then immediately go into a building phase? You certainly can, but I'm a fan of practicing maintenance as well. If you want to stabilize your weight first, I recommend finding your maintenance calories where your body stays at plus minus 500 grams for a couple of months and then merge into a building phase. And then let's cover also the last scenario. You have a higher body fat percentage and wish to have visible muscle. Then I recommend doing a fat loss phase first because it is usually more motivating to uncover what's already there in terms of muscle. And that is also a better starting point to begin a caloric surplus later. How many calories you should eat to minimize fat gain in a building phase, how fast you should increase your calories each week, how many calories you should eat individually in a deficit, and how to implement diet breaks are all goals that my app is guiding you through. The app coaches my personalized methods through the help of my artificial intelligence algorithm. Now, since I gave you all the guidelines in terms of which step you should go for first, it is on you to commit to one phase and stick to it for minimum 3 months. Let me know in the comments below which goal you want to tackle first and hit the like button if the video was helpful to you, and share the video, and also subscribe to my channel to support my mission of spreading my knowledge and spreading the idea of smart diets and training methods for long-term health.